I'm Terry Cooke, and you're watching Hamilton's Vital Signs, a show that examines stuff that's happening in Hamilton and forces that engage our citizens for the improvement in the community. Today we're talking about food insecurity, and it is my pleasure to welcome to the show Sarah Stern from the Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Insecurity. Did I get that right without screwing it up too much?
Well, it was pretty close. It's the Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Security.
You know, you just can't get out of the gate without being corrected, but thank you. Great to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
And Adam?
Yeah, Adam Watson with the City of Hamilton neighborhood.
I was going to give your last name. You didn't have to.
Oh.
Do you think I'd forgotten?
I don't know.
You've been
What are
here
you
twice
doing?
before, Adam Watson. From the City of Hamilton, Neighborhood Action Strategy,
Right.
and particularly from the McQueston Urban Farm.
Yes.
And we're here really, I think, to tell a good news story about a project that's been funded by Maple Leaf Foods and by your center at McQueston, but I think more broadly to talk about food insecurity in Canada. And it just so happens that I saw a note from Laura Katari, who's an activist and somebody who sits on our board at the Community Foundation. She's presently in Geneva working on issues related to poverty, and the stat she quoted was 3.2 million Canadians that are food insecure and about 5 million living very precariously. And so I'm curious, and I told you I was going to provoke you at the front end about often there's cynicism about corporate involvement in philanthropy and community service. And, you know, people would associate Maple Leaf with you feed millions of people in this country and inevitably would say, well, why would Michael McCain, who is a visionary CEO of a company that has a great Canadian profile, get involved in this issue? So talk about a little bit about the history of this issue and of Maple Leaf Foods.
Yeah, well, I'd say Michael McCain and the company Maple Leaf Foods are deeply committed to working collaboratively across the sector with academics, with people in civil society, with other organizations, with politicians and bureaucrats to really look to see how we can be working together to advance food security in Canada. You mentioned those statistics. In a country that's the food basket of the world, or can be considered that way, it's really shameful that 12% of Canadians suffer from food insecurity. And this is, you know, there are many causes for it, but the effect of food insecurity is grave. I mean, it's statistically shown that I think it costs 121% more for healthcare costs for someone who's food insecure. So it's really a problem that affects all of us in Canada, and Michael and the company are deeply committed to seeing what we can do to work to change the situation for Canadians.
And we should say, I've heard Michael speak about this at the Royal York. Adam was there as well, along with Pat Reed from McQueston, when you did the big launch. But he was also in Hamilton today, where I know at the Tamarack conference I was told secondhand that he hit it out of the park with obvious commitment and passion. And I think that speaks highly to both his leadership and to the fundamental commitment of the company.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think it was a great honor. We were invited, and Michael spoke today really about how businesses can give back, how businesses can be working to create social change. And I think what he really emphasized today is that our expertise is not community development. Our expertise is not creating policy. But we, as a company, are experts within the food system, and we have resources that we can give back to help utilize our voice to create change, but also support all of the amazing organizations that are doing great work at the ground level to create change for people. And
the irony is, while the company may not be experts on community development, that's your background. And I'm going to ignore Adam for about the first half of this interview, and tell me a little bit about how you came to do this work.
Well, I have an extensive career working within the not-for-profit sector, initially as a fundraiser and event coordinator, and then really working more on the ground. I spent a year working in Uganda with an organization called Right to Play, at looking at utilizing the idea of play as a tool for community development. For me, moving into this role with the center, so I lead the activities of the center, looking at putting food at the center and building communities. So when people don't have access to food or they need food, if they are going to somewhere to get food, what are the other services that they might need, and how can we use food as a catalyst for change? So really excited to be part of that.
And food being at the center is really what you're doing at the McQueston Urban Farm and in a number of community gardens around Hamilton. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do and a little bit about how you came to do the work that you're doing?
So yeah, I mean, I spend we were talking about this today, how much of my time do I spend at McQueston?
By the way, I should tell you, Sarah was worried about being shiny when she came on camera, when she was going to be opposite two very bald guys who were going to
Yeah. You should come by our office sometime.
glaringly, blindingly
Yes.
shiny. So
we'll
I
always
want to
do
say
this
that
together then.
the haircut is looking good.
Thank
now
you very
continue
much.
with your answer.
So yeah, McQueston, I probably spend a good 2/3 of my time down there. McQueston Urban Farm's been in the works now for, it's been an idea now for almost 10 years. Last year was our big year to build it, and this is our big year to really make it grow. So I think, spending the time down there, getting the programs in place, getting the food production in place, all the great things we want to do this year. But yeah, at the other side, like now is the time of year for community gardens, and everyone's gearing up, and I get to play that role at the city to help make that happen a bit more for some groups. Whether it's, the city provides compost to all the gardens, we provide wood chips to all the gardens. We've got a couple new great ones getting started up. We were talking about the new Hamilton Food Center. They've got a garden going in up at Captain Cornelius Park. So I'm helping them get that in place to support their programming. So this is a busy but exciting time of year because everyone gets really excited around food. One of the things we did down there for this winter was we hosted Seedy Saturday, which is the community garden event for the city, and McQueston hosted it this year. So we were able to bring down all the gardeners, all the keen gardeners for their seed swaps and for events, and we were able to show farm tours and really show the farm off, because I think a lot of people have heard about it in the community, but not a lot of people make their way out there. So it was a great time to showcase it. So.
And you didn't answer my first question, which is,
Why?
how did you come to do this work?
How do I do this work? I came to the city 12 years ago now. I do environmental programs. I have a background in environmental geography and environmental science. And I think, it's funny because my roots, actually, I have a degree from the Ontario Agricultural College, and I don't think I ever really thought I was going to use it in the way that I do, but I'm pretty happy I have it. So I came here working on the Green Cart program for the city, and then I started working on other things for Public Works. Community gardens came up, and the rise of community gardens in the city has been phenomenal in the last decade. The city's now got over 90 gardens. I think we're probably, per capita, we must be the highest in the country. So much attention, so much was needed on that side of things. So that I started working in that. And then with some of that knowledge, then when they started doing the farm and the city decided, okay, well, we're going to do McQueston Urban Farm as the pilot project for urban agriculture, then they tapped me to help out on that. And what a great project to get involved with. So now I'm over with the neighborhood strategy.
So let's connect the dots here. Maple Leaf, we're obviously looking at a national food insecurity strategy. Can you talk a little bit about that and then identify for us how McQueston came into your kind of scope of vision and why McQueston?
For sure. So really, Maple Leaf has made a sustained commitment to advancing food security. The Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Security, of which I lead, was founded or launched this past December. And the center really has 3 areas of focus and how we see that we can play a role in creating change. So the first of those areas is really we've created an innovation fund. So looking for projects across the country which are working to advance sustainable food security, looking to move beyond emergency food relief to really create that long-term change. And before the center had launched, Linda Kewen, who's the chair of our board, was speaking to many people across the country, including you, Terry, about what are people doing, what are some great initiatives that are taking place that we can look to test to see what can we learn from this project, what can we look for, how could it potentially be replicated or scaled. And I know in conversation with you, she learned about the McQueston Urban Farm. From what I understand, there was a long history of the Hamilton Community Foundation investing within the McQueston neighborhood and creating community activators, which is, I think, a great story, the history that took place before the farm was launched. And then the Hamilton city, when you went in, you were able to work with those activators. And for us as the center, it's this really unique opportunity where urban city-owned lands are being utilized to create the farm, to create access to food for people within that community. And it was something that was really community-led and community-driven, and something they wanted. And I think we are so interested in that innovation and seeing how that works. So we were able to partner with the McQuestion Urban Farm, and they're one of our kind of first partnerships that we launched with, one of 4 partnerships that we have right now, to really look and see how does this model work to advance food security within the McQuestion neighborhood.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And the quick history is for the Community Foundation. When we identified poverty in neighborhoods as our long-term strategy and commitment, and kind of the overarching challenge of a generation for Hamilton, a place that had gone through real economic transformation, that's where we placed the first community developer that we hired more than a decade ago, David Derbyshire. He obviously landed there, identified and developed trusting relationships with strong resident leaders. And that really, in addition to all the good things that emerged with the urban farm, also was really the early catalyst for all of the neighborhood's work, the Neighborhood Leadership Institute, the planning teams that we have, and our larger partnership with the city, the school boards, and others. So it really was ground zero in I think, starting to think differently about inner city neighborhoods and both assets as well as challenges that those places were facing. So anyway, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about your stuff. We're going to go to a quick break, but Sarah Stern from Maple Leaf, the Center for Action on Food Insecurity. I know I've screwed that up again, but we'll continue to do that. Adam Watson from the City of Hamilton, from the McQuestion Urban Farm. It's great to have you with us. We'll be right back after this commercial break. Hi, I'm Terry Cooke. You're back. This is Hamilton's Vital Signs. Adam Watson from the city, Sarah Stern from Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Insecurity. We're talking about the lessons that we're learning, both at the Urban Farm and at the Center for Food Insecurity. And I want to start with you. Give us a little bit, Adam, because Sarah touched on a national context of some of the numbers and the magnitude of the challenge around food insecurity. Tell us about McQuestion specifically. What is the state of play on food insecurity? And then secondly, what are you learning through the interactions around the urban farm?
Yeah. Well, McQuestion, I mean, it's not unlike some other communities in the city, but certainly I think what drives the idea of McQuestion being a food insecure neighborhood, and the residents experience this and certainly talk about it, is the lack of access to food. It's a really big thing. And, there's not a grocery store within 2 kilometers. We face food access barriers, come in different sizes, different shapes, and down there we've got quite a few. So physical proximity to fresh food is a big one, certainly. Whether it's just because the grocery store is so far away, because people have mobility challenges, whether there's actually nothing in the neighborhood to access, which we would consider to be fresh and healthy food. Then of course there's economic barriers, and McQuestion's has high rates of poverty, high rates of child poverty specifically, and so there's a multitude of barriers that can exist for any individual household in the neighborhood to get access to fresh food. What we do see down there is a lot of utilizing corner stores for food supply, and that happens very, very close to home with us on the farm. Right across the street, we see that. So providing alternatives right in the neighborhood, healthy alternatives, it's first and foremost food in their backyard. And I think that's one of the great things about the farm, is that it's embedded right in the neighborhood. And then, of course, the ability to offer it at low cost and incredibly fresh is one more barrier that we're able to take away. So then the next barrier, of course, I think is really what we're excited to work on this year, is building community around the farm. And so people feeling comfortable coming to the place, people spending time in the place, people coming out and volunteering. We have a great set of staff and community volunteers that can host people of all abilities and ages, and I think that's one more barrier we're looking to tackle.
I'm mindful of the visit we had with Michael McCain a number of months ago, when he challenged you specifically about the capacity for scale. Because obviously it's great what we do in community gardens, and we meet some of a niche demand, but at the end of the day, given the order of magnitude that we need to respond to, the ability to scale this up matters at some level,
Yeah, I
doesn't
agree.
it?
And I think, yeah, I mean, we've got, I think McQuestion is unique in the sense of it's very seldom would you find a 3-acre piece of land that's
In the heart of the city.
in the heart of the city that has no intention to be sold or ability to be used otherwise. And I think that's perfect why the McQuestion farm, I think, will continue to be
And
unique.
for Hamilton history buffs, was the site of the old municipal airport until shortly after the Second World War,
Yes.
which is why that tract of land remained there. And for a long time was identified as a corridor for the Red Hill Expressway,
Exactly, right.
lower link,
Yes.
right?
So if Woodward would have extended into the valley like they had originally planned, we
Yep.
wouldn't have a farm site.
There you go.
But we do now, and we can use that. But I think, looking around, and I remember that conversation with Michael talking about, what other spaces of land do we have? And I think the one that always comes to mind for me are hydro corridors. If you're looking at being able to produce at scale, to really be able to provide enough food in a neighborhood to make a difference, yeah, community gardens are hard. And I mean, parkland is valuable for multiple purposes, and
Right.
we don't want to take that up. But you look at these underutilized pieces of land, and you look to something like a hydro corridor, or you get creative and you look at rooftops, or you look at indoor production or greenhouses. I think we've got lots of different ways to make a difference in different neighborhoods.
Excellent. Sarah, I want to ask you about the national picture and what you're seeing in terms of innovation, what you're learning from the different, I don't know if you're calling them pilots or not, but your initial projects that you're working in close partnership. And what are kind of the trends, both in terms of things that should give us optimism and maybe some of the intractable challenges?
Yeah. So, I mean, the center is about 4 months old now, or 5 months old. So
Well, you should have solved this problem by now,
We
for God's
haven't. We haven't quite done it. We do have a very ambitious goal.
Yeah.
We want to work collaboratively across Canada to reduce food insecurity by 50% by 2030.
Fabulous.
So we need everyone's help.
Make no small plans.
No, so we are, we feel really good about the projects that we've launched with. So we have 4 projects. So the McQuestion Urban Farm is one of them, really looking at that model of access to food. In Vancouver, we're working with the Greater Vancouver Food Bank, which is one of the biggest food banks in Canada, and they have launched a pilot in transitioning away from the traditional food bank model, creating community hubs, providing services to people that need to access food, providing services to their members. In Northern Manitoba, we're part of a collaborative, the Northern Manitoba Food, Culture and Community Collaborative. We're a group of 16 funders that are funding 23 projects in remote Indigenous communities, creating some economic development and social enterprise in those communities and creating greater access to food.
And I'm curious, in the funders network there, are you the only corporate presence, or are there other?
We are the
businesses?
first corporate presence. I think there will be more in the future, but we are the first of that group right now. Really looking forward to learn from that. I think being part of a collaborative allows us to learn from the other funders in the organization, also provides us an opportunity as a group to learn from the communities. And it's going to be a really amazing opportunity. There's some very interesting projects there, from beekeeping to community food kitchens, the whole gamut. So we can really see what works in different places.
Okay, so talk to me about the intractable.
Yeah, I think when you look at the intractable across Canada, Canada is the only G7 country without a national food strategy. And we know the Minister of Agriculture has a mandate to create a national food policy. And what we've been doing so far is working with others in the sector, like Food Secure Canada and the Food Institute at Guelph, which is now the Arel Food Institute, the Arel Family Food Institute at Guelph, among others, to really see how we can help with that consultation process, how we can make it a collaborative process where civil society, business, and academia all have a seat at that table to be part of that conversation. How can we all bring our expertise together, bring our voices together, and ensure that we have a national food policy that addresses food security for this country?
Yeah. I want to go back to the role of Maple Leaf as a leader nationally, as a large business, because this is a big bet, and with big bets come significant reputational risks. And I'm curious about the experience to date in terms of attracting other businesses who see an alignment, a possibility to contribute, and what's your hope about not that business on its own is going to solve this, because you're right, there's a responsibility for different levels of government, and certainly the NGO sector and citizen groups have to be a part of this. But where do we see business on this, and what are you hoping as an early adopter, early leader may happen?
I would say I think Maple Leaf Foods is really keen to utilize their voice to help create awareness about the situation. We know from the time that we launched that only 1 in 5 people in Canada understand the severity of food insecurity. That means 80% of people don't. So as a business, we have a voice that we can utilize, and we've created a model within the center. So the center is its own registered entity, is a not-for-profit, and we have a model in the way that we plan on delivering and hopefully working with others to achieve this goal. And we look at it as one model for business. Is it the best model? Well, we're gonna see what we can do, and we hope it's something that will inspire others to look at what they can be doing to give back to the communities that they work in as well.
Fantastic. So I want to turn to aspirational things, because both of you at different levels have certainly gotten your feet wet in the area of food insecurity. You're talking to and working with a myriad of different groups and individuals. And I think you've obviously seen some light at the end of the tunnel, but you're also conscious of the enormity of the challenge. If you were to look out 5 or 10 years, so reasonable horizon, what are the kind of 2 or 3 big things, and you've touched on one of the possible big things, a national food strategy, that would fundamentally make a difference and suggest to you that we were on our way to those ambitious targets that your company and our community have set for themselves around food insecurity? So just talk to me about what that would look like.
I mean, I think the barrier around student nutrition in the community, and I mean, we've seen such great work done by Taste Buds and other efforts, but I mean, it's not. There's more to be done, right? And I think you can see. We see it at McQuestion. You see the youth that we're able to engage with. We know the impact on them for not having access to the food that they require. I think is a huge detriment to them personally, their families, and the entire community. I would love to see more progress on that, for sure. Programming that we can offer down there, and we are focusing on that, and we do some of that already, we'll do more. But I think that is a really big one there. And food skills, I think, the ability to be able to cook for yourself, to be able to, it's not enough that we'll be able to say, here is good fresh food. Or even here is good fresh food at very good prices. If you don't know what to do with it, if you aren't accustomed to eating healthy and cooking for your family and them having those tastes for those things, I mean, what difference would it make? So I think that the programming piece is also enormous. And I would love to see, yes, from a Hamilton side of things and from the neighborhood strategy side of things, being able to touch more neighborhoods with this.
Yeah, we talked previously about our experience in Cleveland this summer with the Evergreen Cooperative that have a indoor facility that is probably 6 football fields that produce all of the greens for virtually all of the supermarkets commercially in the Cleveland area. And it's all run as a social enterprise to hire and employ and train people from the adjacent neighborhoods. And it strikes me that at some point we really do want to look at local community economic development as a component of how we can contribute to food security in this community.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
Yeah, it's a big ticket item.
It is, yeah.
They were ambitious, and they're figuring it out. So talk about national aspirations. What would we view as success, and what are the things that we should be aspiring to?
I think that having the national food policy address food security and having that be a priority and a consideration within the policy is really key. And I think that is something we'll hopefully see in the next 2 to 3 years. It's underway, and what that looks like we don't know, but hopefully it'll be there. From the perspective of the center, we're really looking for, in the first few years of our operations, to really be learning something from each project that we're funding, looking to see what is that key takeaway that we can then share with others. What is it that we are going to learn? What do we see that has the potential to be replicated or scaled? So I'd like to see, kind of in the next 5 to 6 years, have there been a few projects, let's say 2 projects that we've funded that are ready to go to scale, and how can we help them take that? How can we help them get there? And what does that look like? So that's what I'd like to see moving forward. I'd also really like to see us work collaboratively to really move the needle on the knowledge that Canadians have around the issue of food insecurity. Right? 60% of people that we surveyed did not know what food insecurity was. Right. And we need to change that. We need to have people pay attention to this issue for us to be able to create change at a national level as well.
And how do you see doing that piece, the educational component, the
So,
awareness component.
I'm hoping, and I think that's really somewhere where we're able to use our voice from the Maple Leaf perspective. So when we launched, we created a video really focusing on the fact that there are 4 million people that are food insecure in Canada, really trying to get that message to send it home. I think our next focus is going to be talking to people about what food insecurity is. So how can we really utilize our voice to do that? And I think everybody can help. You know, I'd encourage people to visit our website, feedopportunity.com. There's a lot that can be learned there. Participate on social media. Find organizations like ours and others. Look at McQuestion, look at the organization for funding, find out what they're doing, and start reading and researching and sharing the message.
Yep.
This is what we want to be able to do.
Comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. That's what they should do. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So I get to say on behalf of this community how grateful we are of the work that Adam, you and your team are doing at the McQuestion Urban Farm, but I think more particularly, Sarah Stern, to you and the folks at Maple Leaf Food and to the Center for Action on Food Insecurity. See, I'm going to continue to screw that up right to the bitter end. How pleased we are by the confidence that you've shown in McQuestion and in Hamilton, and the willingness to learn from each other and tackle a tough national issue. So to Michael McCain and your team, we are very grateful, and we hope to come back, talk about further progress on this front, both nationally and locally, and see how we're making out on this very important issue. Thanks for being here. I'm Terry Cooke. You've been watching Hamilton's Vital Signs. As always, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and we hope you'll come back and join us again next month.